What is up, YouTube? We are here with Alex Carmenaty for our final season standing predictions. We're down to the final 3 weeks of the regular season, guys. So we decided let's sit down, discuss where we think every team is going to finish before the playoffs in the standings. Who's going to make it? Who's going to come up just short and miss? So, yeah, let's get right into the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoy. So, Alex, we are officially down to the final 3 weeks of the NFL season. I thought it would be a good idea for us to go through where we think each team is going to finish in the standings this season. I'm curious who you think out of the AFC is going to get the 1 seed.
Well, I think Baltimore is the easy answer to that one. I mean, they've been the best team in the AFC all season long. I mean, sure they haven't played Kansas City and Miami is behind their tail, but Baltimore is blowing teams out left and right, especially from the NFC. They beat up on Detroit, they beat up on Seattle, they beat up on Jacksonville in the AFC. They beat the Rams in a very close game. Baltimore is winning in very impressive fashion, and
Yes.
many would have thought that with their win over the Bengals when Joe Burrow got hurt, they would have ended Cincy's season.
Yep.
Cincinnati is still alive,
Yep.
but the point I'm trying to make here is that Baltimore has really played good against playoff caliber teams.
Yep.
And they're doing so well, especially with their passing game. Lamar Jackson is throwing a lot more than running the ball. And that's been a key plus for them on the offense. But this Ravens defense is also so tenacious, and they're just getting so much pressure to various quarterbacks, forcing turnovers and making them not happy.
Yep.
So a lot of the success is mainly on the defensive side of things for Baltimore. And I mean, again, compared to Kansas City, compared to Miami, even compared to Jacksonville, even Buffalo, the Bills to a certain extent, their defense has been consistently solid
Yep.
week after week. Kansas City, sometimes here and there, they fumble. Miami, same thing. Buffalo, their defense has kind of been hit or miss too. Jacksonville's in that same category. So the Ravens have just been so consistent when it comes to their defense. And there's a reason why they're the only 11-3 team in
Yes.
the AFC.
Yes. I agree. I think the Ravens are so dominant this year. Like we said, when we were filming yesterday, that we thought this Ravens team would be the team that represents the AFC in the Super Bowl. This team
Mm-hmm.
really is just been amazing this season. The one question I have for you, with their 11-3 record, does it raise any concern to you that the Dolphins are a game behind them, and two of their games are the Niners and the Dolphins? Does that raise any concern to you?
Yes and no. If they lose to San Francisco and Miami wins their game versus Dallas this week, then okay, maybe there's some concern. But let's not forget, Baltimore is going to have to face Miami,
Yes.
and Baltimore is the better team. And when the Dolphins blow a 14-point lead with 3 minutes to go to the Titans, I wouldn't trust them versus Baltimore. So at the end of the day, I think there's going to be some really, tight closeness between Miami and Baltimore following this week 16.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, Miami's barely holding on to their own division with Buffalo right behind them.
Yep.
So that is something that could be of a concern. But for the Dolphins, you're more worried about them holding on to their division lead than Baltimore losing the 1 seed. And
True.
like I said already before, Baltimore's the better team than Miami. If you put this Baltimore defense against the Miami offense with Tua and this really good rushing attack,
Yeah.
I think they struggle. Like Detroit struggled, like
Yep.
Seattle struggled, like Jacksonville struggled, like some of these other playoff teams have
Yeah. They
struggled
break down
throughout the
elite
season.
teams. Yep. As you said.
So I think that same trend continues when the Ravens and Dolphins face off against each other later on in the season. But
Yes.
like I said already, even if Baltimore loses to San Francisco, San Fran's the better team personally, in
Yes.
my opinion. But let's say they lose to the Niners, that's not a detrimental thing for them to lose the one
Yeah.
seed. Again, it's more of the Dolphins holding their own than the Ravens somehow losing this one spot.
Yes. Uh, so we'll move on to who do you think has the second seed that is currently held by the Miami Dolphins, who got some challenging games left. They are 10-4 right now, but they got the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills left. I'm curious if you think they hold that. The Bills are also a game behind them, so I'm really
Right.
curious what you think on who's going to get the second seed.
Look, this one can really come down to it. My gut kind of goes with Miami. But I also look at the Bills' remaining schedule, the Chargers, the Patriots, and sure they face off in Week 18 to see who wins that division. But I think Miami's going to beat the Cowboys. I think they'll lose to Baltimore. That last game is such a toss-up. I'm not sure. Now let's not forget both of these teams faced off back in September, and the Dolphins got blown out in Buffalo
Yep.
to Buffalo. Things are going to be a bit different this time in South Florida, but at the same time, I mean, based on what we saw last time around, and also that the Dolphins are starting to really lose a grip of things, I wouldn't be shocked that Buffalo somehow wins this division and them getting the 2 seed. I'm not
Yep.
sure if it's going to happen, nor am I sure if Miami is really going to hold on.
Yep.
But to give you a straight answer, I'll be honest with you, Jason, with how the Bills have looked, they beat up on Dallas, they got the Chargers, they should beat the Patriots. Now, guaranteed they lost to New England last time around, but I think they'll really be a much different team this
They
time.
won't let it
I
happen a
think
second time.
they won't. And with that in mind, I think the Dolphins are going to blow this division lead. I think Buffalo gets the 2, surprisingly somehow gets the 2 after being so back and forth, especially following that terrible loss to Philadelphia. But I think they're going to find a way to win these 2 games, build off steam. I think Miami's really going to be beat up these next 2 weeks
Yeah.
versus Dallas and versus Baltimore. And with that in mind, no matter if they're home or not, I think the Bills are going to find a way to cream them like they did back in September. So
Yes.
expect a season sweep for the Bills. And I can't believe I'm saying this now because back in November, I would have said the Bills would have missed the playoffs. But as of right now, I see Buffalo as the 2nd seed.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, the one thing for the Dolphins is we know how it is with them. They are terrible when it comes to December football. They figure out a way to collapse once you get to December. Um, I would not be surprised to see it happen again here. We've seen a lot of injuries piling up on the defense, some on their offense as well. Tyreek's banged up a little bit. You also never know what's going to happen with Tua. Josh Allen looks like he's found himself a little bit after a dominant performance against the Bills. You would have thought that, uh, you know, that Cowboys defense would give him some trouble, especially with how he's looked this season. And there was no trouble at all there.
Right.
So, yeah, I will go with the Bills. Question, and I know we'll get back into it more when we get into the wild card teams. Do you think Miami potentially even drops out of the playoffs?
No, I think they're going to be in the same spot as Philadelphia. They hold
Okay.
the lead for a long time, but then they melt that lead away, but they still make the postseason as a 5, 6, or 7, most likely to 5, probably. So
Okay.
no, I mean, again, the Dolphins are a good enough team to make the playoffs. The Dolphins are not a good enough team to win their division.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. They always figure out a way to collapse, and that does not bode well for winning a division. We move on to the 3rd seed, currently held by the 9-5 Kansas City Chiefs, who got the Vegas Raiders, the Cincinnati Bengals, and Chargers left on their schedule. Who do you think gets it? Do you think the Chiefs hold on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I
Yeah.
mean, KC has had such a messy season. Now,
Yeah.
Taylor Swift has shaken things off for sure, but at the same time, they're at 9 wins. Their wins have not been pretty,
Yeah.
and their losses, when they have lost tough games, have also been very ugly.
Yeah.
So you see this KC team on this back and forth seesaw. I think they'll still be the 3 seed. Look at the rest of their division. The Chargers are going nowhere. The
Yeah.
Raiders are going nowhere. The Broncos blew their chance. So KC is going to win their division in a cakewalk, but at the same time, that doesn't mean they're truly a 3 seed.
No.
Technically, they are. Don't get me wrong. But with how back and forth they've been this year, I wouldn't be shocked if somehow the Bengals or whoever the 6 seed is somehow could beat them at
Yeah.
Arrowhead. Maybe, maybe not. That could be a stretch. But at the same time, with how inconsistent the Chiefs have been, especially on the offense, they'll get the 3 seed, but I'm not sure if they'll win the first round. I'm really not confident
Yeah.
or completely confident in them getting past the first round, the wild card round. So they'll hold on. They'll beat up on the Raiders and Chargers. The Bengals might give them a good run for the money.
The
I think
Bengals
Casey,
tend to give them a good run for their money.
yeah. And look, I mean, I think Cincinnati will lose that game overall, but I look at Jake Browning. I look at this Bengals team with how revived they've been post Joe Burrow's injury, and it's really impressive. It really, really is
Yeah.
impressive, especially when they beat the Colts by 20, and now the Colts have turned things around following that. So, they will be the 3. No question about it. No matter who they play, no matter how the rest of the regular season finishes for them. But don't guarantee them to make it past the wild card, even as the 3 seed.
Yeah, I'd say before we move on to the AFC South, this is the one time I'd say in Pat Mahomes' career I look at them and I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender, like a
No,
team. Yeah,
no. I mean, look, Baltimore's much better. Say what you want about Miami. They're a better team consistently, at least. And the Bills aren't great overall, but they beat Kansas City.
yeah,
And sure, Kadarius Toney had his false start, and Mahomes had his meltdown. But regardless, Buffalo still won the game.
yeah,
So that's all that matters at the end of the day. KC still lost to Buffalo.
yes,
And let's say somehow the Dolphins hold on and the Bills have to go to Arrowhead. Let's say they're the 6 and KC's the 3.
yeah,
Don't be shocked if KC loses again.
yeah. No, you're right, 100%. We move into the AFC South, which is a little bit of a cluster right now, with 3 8-6 teams. It's
That's one
currently
way to
held
put
by the Jaguars. We got the Jaguars at the 4th seed. And it's still, obviously, keep in mind the Colts and the Texans are in that spot, tied with them as well. The Jaguars' remaining schedule is Bucks, Panthers, Titans. For the Colts, Falcons, Raiders, Texans. Texans, obviously, Browns, Titans, Colts. Who do you think wins this AFC South?
Well, this is a real juggernaut, and it really is. When the Colts have turned it around, the Texans have been back and forth, and Jacksonville's melting away. In all honesty, the 4 seed belongs to Indy. The Colts have just been the better team out of all 3 the past couple weeks.
Yeah.
They've been so good on the offense, even without Jonathan Taylor, without Zach Moss, and for a majority of the season without their rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew, the Minshew madness has gone from Jacksonville to Indy. And at the expense of the Jaguars, not only do I think they're going to lose the division, but I think they miss the playoffs.
Really?
I think Jacksonville's really going to melt so back forward, so backward that they're going to miss the postseason. Sure, it's the injury to Lawrence, but it's the injury to Kirk. It is the inconsistency with this defense, and it's the schedule that's really hurting them. So, with all those pieces in mind, and also keep in mind they lost to Cincinnati in a game they probably should have won. I think Jacksonville really has blown their chance. So I think the Colts get it based off that. And the Colts offense has just been so good with Minshew, with Pittman, and also you got Sermon and Goodwin just being so good in the back end on the run game for Indy. So I think this Colts offense is really coming alive at the right time. And this Colts defense is also starting to wake up.
Yep.
TJ Speed has been really good for this defense for the Colts, and DeForest Buckner is getting so much pressure to the quarterback. So I look at this Colts defense. They are a much better defense compared to the majority of the year. I think they're just going to get it. I think they're playing good at the right time. That's going to give them the 4 seed, while the Colts, like I said, they'll hold on. The Texans will just get in, and Jacksonville's going to miss it altogether.
Okay. We move in, though, to the first wild card spot held by the Cleveland Browns right now, who have, for their remaining schedule, they have the Texans, the Jets, the Bengals. Do you think the Browns hold on at the 5 spot? What do you think happens with the 5 seed?
Oh, yeah, no question. Look,
you think?
Joe Flacco has saved the season. And it's crazy to say that. It's crazy to think that Joe Flacco has been relevant recently. But you know what? He's killing it these past 2 games. They're 2 big wins for the Browns. And in that win versus Chicago, how did they score the go-ahead touchdown? His pass to Amari Cooper. That's been the key. Joe Flacco is getting Amari Cooper involved with this Browns offense, which is what they need after the injury to Chubb, after all the other injuries they've had, especially with Watson being done for the year. So Joe Flacco has saved the Browns season. He's been phenomenal. And the Browns defense has been really good all year long, especially with Myles Garrett at the helm. But let's not forget, I would say that Dustin Hopkins is a top 5 kicker right now in the National Football League. Not all time, not technically, when it comes to all these different talents. But as of right now, he is a top 5 kicker in this league because his foot has solely won so many games for the Browns this year that they're in this position as the first wild card. So I think they hold on. They're going to beat up on the Jets. I'm not sure if they beat Houston. I mean, maybe they could, maybe not. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they do beat the
Yeah,
Texans, but at the end of the day, they're gonna win their games. They're gonna beat the Bengals, I think, as well. I don't think the Bengals miss, but I think they're gonna hurt the Bengals seeding altogether
yeah,
in the wild card race. So I think Cleveland holds on there. The question now is who are those last two wild card
yeah.
teams?
What's crazy to think about is the fact that with how bad it has been for Cleveland for years, that the Cleveland Browns are going to be a double-digit win team,
Yeah.
led by Joe Flacco.
And what's so ironic too is that Joe Flacco was the most hated man in Cleveland for a long
I
period of
know,
time.
I know.
I mean, look, I mean, he was the Ravens quarterback. And as we all know, the old Browns relocated to Baltimore and became the Ravens.
Yeah,
And Joe Flacco would beat up on the new Browns every single year. And that championship, one of the two Super Bowls they won, should have been with Joe Flacco as a Cleveland Brown. But
yeah.
now Joe Flacco is a Cleveland
It is
Brown.
crazy. Yeah,
And it is so ironic how he's leading them to such a successful season to this current point, and how he's going to get them in the playoffs as an ex-Baltimore Raven who won a championship with that team.
yeah. No, that is crazy. It's crazy to see uh Cleveland fans loving Joe Flacco. You would never have thought you'd see that. We move on to the sixth seed, currently held by the Cincinnati Bengals. Their remaining schedule is Steelers, Chiefs, Browns. Do you think they hold on or to the sixth seed, or who do you think gets that?
Look, I think they're going to lose two of the next three, but at the same time, the Texans have to hold on. You got Jacksonville, who I think is going to slip away. And I mean, Denver is somewhat in there, but I think they're really out of the mix. I think the Bengals are going to get in, but I'll be honest with you, I think they get in as a seven seed. I think
Okay.
they're going to step back. And sure, Browning has saved the season. He's really building chemistry with the offense. The defense has been really good too recently. They're picking up big wins, especially to end,
Yeah.
Jacksonville's reign for a period of time. That win they had versus Jacksonville was so huge that kept them in the race. And Jacksonville's really suffering the effects. I think they're going to get killed by Tampa
Yeah.
in week 16. At the same time, I look at this Bengals team. I think Houston's better. And with Houston being better, even with their mishaps recently, the Texans are more of a relevant team and more of a consistent team to jump over them.
Yeah.
So look, I think Houston gets in. I think Cincinnati gets in, but those spots are going to be flipped. I think the Bengals will be the 7 seed rather than the 6.
Yeah. No, I could see that. Like I said, the Bengals will have no issue with the Steelers and Mason Rudolph. That should be honestly an easy win for them. The Steelers have completely collapsed their season.
Yeah,
Chiefs, look, the Bengals always play a good game against the
they
Chiefs. They
do.
really do.
They
So
do.
we'll see. I will lean towards the Chiefs winning that game, but I also wouldn't be shocked because of how, bad Mahomes has been, how bad the offense has been at times. The defense has disappeared a few times in some key games, like against you guys. They've been pretty good, the defense, but they have disappeared at times. I would not be surprised if this is a much closer game than people expect it to be,
Right.
especially
No,
considering
sure.
even with Browning as the quarterback. I think it will be
it
close.
it 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 could be a close game, but I think KC will just muscle it out.
Yep.
And look, I mean that will play a role in that. And like I said, I think Houston gets the 6 and Cincy gets the 7.
Yep. So as we're talking about the seven, obviously currently you said you think they're gonna win the division, but it is held by the Colts right now, who, like we said, play the Falcons, Raiders, Texans, and the Texans play the Browns, Titans, Colts. You think Houston gets it and Jacksonville completely misses, you said. So
Yeah, look, I mean, again, Houston will be the 6 seed. Cincinnati will be the 7 seed. Jacksonville's out. Pittsburgh's out. Denver's out.
yeah.
That's how it's going to play out. So that's honestly how it's going to go. And again, how all these puzzles are going to be solved is what happens with the AFC South. And the Colts right now have the hot hand. And they're playing a Falcons team that's falling apart. They played a Raiders team that's been a joke all year. And then, look, they beat Houston earlier this year. Wouldn't be shocked if they season swept them, honestly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe Houston wins and maybe they, slow down the Colts a bit. Who knows? But as of right now, give me the Colts to win that division. You're going to have Houston as the 6, Cincy as the 7, Jacksonville misses. So does Pittsburgh and Denver.
Okay. The one thing I want to ask you before we move on to the NFC East, if your prediction and that prediction here is right, and the Jaguars miss the playoffs, does this raise concern about Trevor Lawrence as a future guy?
It doesn't raise concern about Trevor Lawrence. It raises concern about, I would say, maybe to a certain extent, Doug Peterson. And I would also say their defense. Trevor Lawrence got hurt, banged up, fine.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, Trevor Lawrence also lost a key piece, Christian Kirk, via the injury. So most of it is on, I mean, some of it's on Trevor Lawrence, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to trade him away or force him out based off this disaster.
Oh no,
A
I'm
lot of
not
it,
saying that. I just think
right,
it definitely
right,
raises
right.
concern.
No, it look, it doesn't raise concern about Trevor Lawrence's future. If that's the question, it doesn't raise his concern or the concern about his future. What the concern should be, does Doug Peterson keep his job?
Yeah.
Does the defensive coordinator keep his job? What is this defense going to look like next season? What will they do to revamp their defense? Those are the questions to ask. Those are the questions that should be answered, not whether or not Trevor Lawrence might be, his future might be in jeopardy with Jacksonville. So
When I ask that question, I more like mean like, can he be that like elite guy that could lead you to a division win, lead you throughout the
he could.
playoffs? That's kind of
Yes, 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 he can. But again, it all depends on the surrounding pieces.
yes.
And Jacksonville is going to have to address those surrounding pieces, not Trevor Lawrence.
Yes. One thing I will say for the Jaguars is you have to get, like you said, keep Christian Kirk, ETN, Evan Ingram, fine. But besides those pieces, I mean, Calvin Ridley's been good, but he also has some games where he completely vanishes and is nowhere to be found. Uh, some of those moves, Zay Jones has been a complete failure this year for them. I want to say he's had 3 to 4 stints on the injured list already this year, and that's just terrible. I don't know if you saw last week, but there was a bomb down the field to him, and because of his knee, he wasn't able to get it, and it was probably going to be an easy touchdown.
Right.
So, like, his issues this year have really affected that Jacksonville team. He has hurt them multiple times.
Well, look, I mean, if that's the case and that is true, you got to pursue a new wide receiver, either on the trade market for agency, or if there's someone besides Marvin Harrison that stands out in this year's draft class, pursue them with a draft pick. So,
Yeah.
look, we'll see what happens with them, but again, it is the surrounding pieces that need the attention, not Trevor Lawrence.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I just think. Look, I think the AFC is going to be an interesting spot right now. For the rest of this, I still think Broncos, the Steelers, and as much as I hate to say it, I do think I don't know. I think the Texans still could be in a bit of a weird place. We'll see. I'm still part of me still torn on if it's going to be the Texans or the Jaguars who get that last spot. That's the thing.
Well, look, again, I think it's a reasonable concern. We don't know what's going to happen, and Houston's been shaky. Jacksonville's been shaky. We're confident the Colts will pull this out, but we're not confident in either team 100%. But I'm more
Yes.
confident in Houston than Jacksonville with what I've seen the past couple of weeks, especially.
Yes.
So, look, Houston is just skating by. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but Jacksonville is completely falling apart.
Yes.
There are two big differences there.
True.
And
True.
with that in mind, I think Houston is just going to find a way to just hold on, just sneak in. And honestly, if they're the 6th seed, maybe they could beat KC, maybe not. But don't be shocked if they lose to Kansas City, or
Yeah.
don't be shocked if they somehow beat Kansas City.
Yeah.
But who knows what's going to happen? What I do know, and what I do think is going to happen, is that Jacksonville misses outright.
Yes. We got 2 teams, by the way, that are like trying to battle in with the Steelers, by the way, who got the Bengals, Seahawks, Ravens. The Steelers are done, even though they're a game out. That
They're a joke.
schedule with how they look, and now it being Mason Rudolph, I think they're done. They had a good start to the season, although they are another team who really, even in those wins, they were never pretty wins. They were
Now,
really, really bad.
Pittsburgh this year was the most fraudulent plus 500 team that I've ever seen, besides the previous 500 plus team Pittsburgh had when they were 10-0 in 2020.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, they're a joke. Their offense stinks. Their defense is not great. Mike Tomlin at this point, I think, should be let go. I think they really have to just revamp the whole franchise.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I mean, Kenny Pickett's not the answer.
Yeah.
Where's Mitch Trubisky? And obviously, Mason Rudolph is not a franchise quarterback.
No.
So there's a lot of soul searching and lots of changes that need to be made by Pittsburgh this offseason. They had their little effort. They fell apart like always. We expected them to fall apart. And then when you lose to Arizona and New England back-to-back weeks, you have no right to be in the playoff picture, let alone the
Yes.
playoffs. So, no, they have no chance.
Yes.
They're done. They're finished.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Before we move on to the NFC East, there's one more team we got to discuss, and they're 7-7, and it's the Denver Broncos. And they have the Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders left. Three very, very winnable games. While, yes, they really, really hurt their chances with the couple recent games, they're not, with some of these teams teetering right now, a little, drop from the Texans, the Jaguars really falling off. Can you see the Broncos somehow pulling their way into this with that schedule that they have?
Look, I mean, the schedule's favorable. Don't get me wrong. But I look at this Denver team, and they've been so back and forth. 1-5, 6-5, 7-6, 7-7. They're in the picture. They still are. But I think Houston will just pull it out, like I said earlier. The Texans have had their mess ups, sure, but I think they're good enough to just pull things out, even if that includes a small win versus Cleveland. At
Yeah,
the same time, I mean, sure, the Broncos might have the schedule in their favor, but this is a Broncos team that just got blown out by 25 points to the Lions.
true.
And sure, I'm not comparing Detroit to these, worst teams, but what I am saying here is that you're not sure what you're going to get with Denver.
True.
Houston at least has been more consistent with CJ Stroud
Yeah.
throughout the entire season, and I know they're going to ride or die with CJ Stroud. Denver's going to ride or die with Russell Wilson, but
Yeah.
at the same time, they could really die.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm not confident with Denver because of what I'm not expected to see. I just don't have a clear expectation for Denver. Jacksonville, I think, is going to fall apart. Houston, I think, will just get in somehow.
Yeah.
Denver, I think, will just miss. And I think even with some of these favorable games, I find them botching it somehow.
You think?
Like they could somehow lose to New England. Wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they got in, I wouldn't be that appalled, but I just don't see it happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. The AFC, it's interesting. A lot of teams still in that mix. Obviously, we've seen some teams recently get eliminated, but the AFC has been a lot of fun this year. I actually think it's been more fun to watch the AFC than the NFC. So now, Alex, we move on to the NFC. The current 1 seed held by the San Francisco 49ers. Do you think they hold on and win the NFC?
Jason, let me think. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it. San Francisco is going to be the 1 seed. They are a phenomenal team. They're rock solid. Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey are both going to be in the MVP category. And look, they're going to have a great game on Christmas versus Baltimore. Their offense is just so much better. And look, I mentioned before how Baltimore's defense is really so good. They're finally going to have a true test against this really good 49ers offense. I think San Fran's going to outmatch them, but that's not going to really, really destroy the confidence and true talent of the Baltimore defense.
No.
So regardless, they'll be the one. They'll beat up on Baltimore. They'll win the rest of their games. They're going to easily be the 1 seed, and they're going to enjoy the very nice bye by the time January 15th hits.
Yes, I forgot to mention, obviously, their schedule is Ravens, Commanders, Rams. So,
they got it. They got it. They'll be, what are they, 11-3 now? They'll be 14-3.
Yeah. Look, we said this yesterday when we were talking. I think it'll be very interesting to see how this Ravens defense does against McCaffrey.
Oh, sure. Look, I mean, that's going to be really intriguing. Don't get me wrong. McCaffrey's going to have a real test, but so is the Ravens defense. They're going to have a real test shutting down the best running back in football. So that's going to be really fun to watch on Christmas. Don't get me wrong, but I think McCaffrey will outperform this defense, and you'll see the Niners win this game. And again, they'll just take one step closer to being the 1 seed this year.
Yep. We move on to the 2 seed. While it is a tie, it is technically held by the Dallas Cowboys, who are 10-4, also tied with the Eagles. The Cowboys got the Dolphins, the Lions, the Commanders left. The Eagles have Giants, Cardinals, Giants. Who do you think finishes here for the 2nd seed?
You would think Philly would based off that schedule, but Philadelphia's a mess, and
Yeah.
they are absolutely struggling. They can't get their own act together. And the fact that they were up versus Seattle, blew that game to Drew Lock, and then Jalen Hurts with an ugly pick to end the game to Julian Love. I don't trust Philadelphia to beat the Giants twice.
Yeah.
Maybe they beat them once. Maybe Arizona, maybe they'll win that game, what have you. They should at least. But honestly, I look at the Cowboys schedule. I don't think they're going to beat Miami. They could beat Detroit,
Yeah.
and they will beat the Commanders again. So I have more confidence in Dallas and Dak Prescott than I do Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Now, sure, Dak Prescott did not look good. This, last week was difficult.
Yeah.
This week will be difficult. Week 17 is going to be hard versus Detroit. But the Green Bay Packers exposed Detroit. The Ravens really demolished Detroit. The Lions have also had some really bad losses this year.
Yes.
So Detroit's good, and we'll touch on it soon that they'll be the 3 seed. But regardless, I think Dallas is just the better team on both sides of the ball, and they're more consistent. So give me Dallas. They're going to be the 2 seed. Philly will drop to a wild card spot.
Yep. And as you were just talking about the Lions, they're in a little bit of an interesting place right now because, yes, they are 3 games ahead of the Vikings. They're the current 3 seed. They got the Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings. And technically, if they lose all 3 of these games, the Vikings could end up still winning the division. So what do you think here for 3rd place?
Well, look, they'll hold on. I think they'll lose the
It
Dallas,
just takes one win. One
right.
win.
And look, I think they'll beat Minnesota in week 16. I think they'll beat them in week 18 also. So, you know what? I think Detroit wins 2 or 3 both versus the Vikings. They'll lose to Dallas. That'll be more than enough to keep them at the 3 seed. And, we've talked about their offense a lot. Jared Goff has had mistakes, but he's building a great chemistry with St. Brown and Laporta. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the best 1-2 running back duos in the National Football League. And their defense has been kind of back and forth, but recently they're really turning it up again. So give me Detroit, easy 3, easy division winner. They'll take on the 6 seed.
Yep. We move on to the 4th seed for the NFC South. Somebody has to win division, currently held by the Bucks, who have the Jaguars, Saints, Panthers left. And keep in mind, the Saints are right behind them too, and the Saints got the Rams, Bucks, Falcons, and technically the Falcons aren't out of it. They got the Colts, Bears, Saints. So who do you think wins this division? Who do you got here?
Look, I said 2 weeks ago and last week that I think the Falcons win it, but I'm changing my tone based off what I saw with Tampa last week at the expense of my Packers. No, seriously, I am.
Oh,
Tampa,
I laughed because I thought you were about to say what you saw with the Falcons against the Panthers.
Well,
That
that too. That too. Atlanta's falling apart like always. New Orleans can't get their act together, especially if Derek Carr's healthy or not. And I think Tampa is just more consistent. And someone has to win that trash bucket division. So the trash bucket crown will go to Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So I think they'll get it. They'll hold on. They'll be the 4 seed. But like always, the NFC South will be the 4 seed, whoever wins that division, and they'll get killed by whoever the 5th seed is. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen. Tampa will get the 4.
I can't believe we're gonna say this, that even the person that doesn't win the division still could be a wild card team. How bad is
Right.
that? That's so
Right.
bad.
That's nuts.
Yeah. But we move on to the 5 seed. The Eagles, obviously, yeah, they're the 5 seed, but they are tied for that last spot. Their remaining games, the Giants, Cardinals, Giants. Do you think this is where they finish at the 5 spot?
I do. I think they'll beat the Giants once. I don't see them honestly, they could lose all 3 games. Honestly. But I think as a whole, if we're being realistic, I think they'll beat the Giants once and lose once to New York, maybe at MetLife or maybe on Christmas. They should beat Arizona, but if they don't, they suck.
Arizona
Honestly,
just put up 29 against the Niners. I will not doubt them right now.
Kyler Murray's playing really good right now. So they could lose to Arizona also. Look, Philly will be the 5. I think they'll be the 5. They'll play Tampa. They'll beat Tampa. And then if they play San Francisco, which would make a little more sense, it depends on what happens with the 6 and 7 seed. If somehow the 3 or 4 or the 3 or 2 get upset, Philly would be the 5, and they probably would play Frisco in round 2.
Yeah.
They got demolished in Philly. They're going to get obliterated in San
Yeah.
Francisco if that matchup happens.
Yes.
So put Philly at the 5, but honestly, they could still lose all 3 games remaining.
Yes. So I'm curious before we move on to the 6th seed. And I know we were talking and, the Trevor Lawrence thing I said probably wasn't the best thing about raising concern about him. But if they go from 10-1 and potentially were to go to 10-7, the Eagles losing 6 straight, and then they go a first round exit, does that raise any concern for you?
It raises concern over the defensive coordinator spot. It raises concern. Jalen Hurts has not been good this year. Don't get me wrong. But Jalen Hurts is their franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
They're not going to dump off Jalen Hurts after
I
having this
know.
bad of a year. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. If this happens, and if they lose to Tampa Bay somehow, then there's going to be a lot of questions about Nick Sirianni, about the offensive defensive coordinators, about the defense itself because they can't stay healthy for their lives. There are lots of questions to ask, especially on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
And on top of that, what did the Eagles do with their offensive line? Because their offensive line can't stay healthy either. And not just that, Jason Kelce has taken a whole bunch of false starts that has cost them games this year.
Yep.
I'm not saying you move on from Jason Kelce, but you realign your offensive line. That's protecting Jalen Hurts because he's been banged up multiple times this year already. Yeah. So there are lots of questions on the line and on the defense as well as the coaching for Philadelphia. It's not – there are some questions on Jalen Hurts and his injuries and his issues with turning the ball over, but it's about Philly. How did this happen, and how can we prevent this from happening next year and years beyond?
Yeah, I will say they say Jalen Hurts is currently hurting the Eagles.
Ha, ha, ha. Yes, they are. That's pretty good.
We move on, though, to the 6th seed, currently held by the Minnesota Vikings, who got the Lions, Packers, Lions left for their schedule. Do you think they hold on to this, or do you think they fall out?
Nope, they're done. I think they miss. I think my Packers sadly miss. I think the Saints miss. I think the Giants miss. I think the Bears miss, which means the Rams will be the 6 and Seattle will be the 7.
Yeah.
That's what that means. The Rams have gotten hot at the right exact time. And because of that, Matthew Stafford looks like his old self. Cooper Kupp back the same form. Puka Nacua, on the other hand, that's a scary 1-2 punch when it comes to passing the ball. And Tutu Atwell, Kyron Williams, their offense has been really, really good. And I mentioned this last time around. Aaron Donald is doing Aaron Donald things again because he's back to his old self as the great Aaron Donald. Yeah. This defense is really good for the Rams, mainly because of him again. So the Rams get in as the 6. Minnesota's going to melt away. Josh Dobbs, he's done. He's toast. He was supposed to be, and we all fell for it. Maybe he's the future or what have you, but he's falling apart like cheap wax.
Those conversations quickly vanished.
Yeah.
They're just not even there anymore. Just really, really terrible situation for them. Obviously, you lose Kirk Cousins, who has been your quarterback for the last couple years and has been pretty good for you guys. Has helped them, them. And, then he's gone. You get Dobbs, who you thought was going to be better. And then he collapses. And now you got Nick Mullins as the quarterback, and it's just a disaster. So
look, I mean, again, we talked a lot about it earlier this week where Kirk Cousins gets hurt, Dobbs comes in, looks good, then falls apart. Nick Mullins, when you have to rely on him, you're in trouble. And Justin Jefferson has not been healthy this season. And when he comes back, he gets re-injured. So Minnesota, all hope is lost, especially when they have to play Detroit twice to end the season. They're done. They're not making it.
So you got Rams move up to 6. That's where you see them. And let's go on to the 7th seed. You got Seattle, did you say? Is that who you said?
Seattle. I think the Seahawks get it.
Okay, and Drew I will Lock,
say
Their schedule
Drew,
is Titans, Steelers, Cardinals.
well, not just that with the schedule in their favor, but Drew Lock just saved their season versus the Eagles.
Yep.
I mean, the fact that they beat Philly the way they did on the offense and defense, they are on point at the right time.
Yep.
They're gonna steamroll Tennessee. They're gonna beat Pittsburgh. They're gonna beat Arizona.
Yep.
Seattle's got it. And look, you compare that schedule to Green Bay. Sure, Carolina's in Week 16, but you got the Vikings and Bears back to back, and who knows what could happen. The Giants have the Eagles twice, and who knows what can happen there, despite the fact that I think they could win both, if not lose one of them. The Bears, I think, aren't going to make it. The Saints played the Rams this week. That's not going to work out well for them. So Seattle has the viable option because of the strength of scheduling.
Yep.
But at the same time, Drew Lock has to keep it going.
Yes.
Kenneth Walker played phenomenal, and he's going to be a key piece to the offense on top of Drew Lock finding consistency with Lockett, with Jackson Smith-Njigba, and also with DK Metcalf. So Drew Lock is starting to pick it up at the right time, and so is Kenneth Walker on the offense. And on the defense, Julian Love is a beast. 2 huge picks to win that game versus Philadelphia. So that defense will really play a big role on top of the offensive resurgence. Seattle will just get in with the strength of schedule as that 7 spot.
Yeah, the one thing, and we got a few more minutes, I will say, we can't count the Saints out just yet because of the incompetence of that division. The Bucks could collapse. We know how the Falcons are.
No, you're right.
And they're also 7-7, and the Saints have the Rams, Bucks, and Falcons. And yeah, I could actually see them going 2-1 in those games. So
honestly, Jason, I think they go 1-2.
Really?
And
you think they lose to the Bucks?
Yeah, I do. I think they lose to Tampa, especially in Tampa. And look, say what you want about, how it works out, but Derek Carr has just not been healthy. Jameis Winston really hasn't had a chance to prove himself. And the Saints defense is atrocious. And if Baker Mayfield's putting up 300 passing yards and 4 touchdowns versus Green Bay, why can't he do the same versus New Orleans, especially at home? So I think Baker will be carried by Mike Evans. I think the offense will run through him. They'll just have enough gas to get through. And with that gas, they'll win the division, including that win versus New Orleans to make sure they lock it down.
Yeah. One thing I believe, I don't know if you saw this, I believe Mike Evans has had a 10 straight 1,000-yard receiving years. That is incredible. I give that guy so many props.
He is easily a top 5 receiver, and he is one of the most, if not the most, underrated receiver in the National Football League. And before Tom Brady, before he was really working with a great quarterback, the GOAT, obviously, before working with the GOAT to win a championship, he had Jameis Winston and Baker Mayfield, or before Jameis and after Baker Mayfield. So think about that. Mike Evans has literally had to work with straw in a haystack. And with that in mind, double-digit 1,000-yard receiving seasons, how does that happen with just average quarterbacks? It's not the average quarterback. It's Mike Evans himself.
And one thing
and the same thing's happening now with Baker.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about him is he does not get as many receptions as you think he does. He does that with really not getting a lot of receptions. They struggle to find him a lot.
Right.
Look,
he is a phenomenal receiver when it comes to yards after the catch. That's his specialty. Yeah. And again, that's why he's led Tampa Bay, even with losing seasons, to at least 7 wins because of Mike Evans and his truly gifted offensive talent.
Yeah. We move in, though, quickly before we end this. We talk about the 4 teams that are technically currently still in the race, but probably not going to make it. The Falcons, the Packers, the Giants, the Bears. It's just such a painful year for those teams because they've had golden opportunities to win games and be right in that mix. The Packers have lost some painful ones. The Bears lost a painful one last week and 1 or 2 earlier in the season when they blew that game to the Lions and lost in the final couple minutes. The Giants blowing the game to the Bills and the Jets. The Giants could be 7-7. The Falcons losing the game to Carolina. There was a game earlier in the season. All 4 of these teams could have been in the mix right now and probably would be potential playoff teams if they did not blow those games.
Well, look, I mean, I've ranted about Jordan Love more than enough on your program, and I'm going to save the viewers their sanity and my sanity. I'll give them a break this time. But the Packers, I mean, again, they're just going to blow it, and I just don't know what to expect from Jordan Love. One week he's great, next time around he is horrific. So that inconsistency on the offense and especially the defense with Joe Barry, it's not going to get them in with how
Yeah,
Seattle has their strength of schedule and with the Rams being hot.
yeah,
It's not going to work.
yeah,
Same thing with Minnesota. Defense has been struggling all year long. You're down to your third quarterback, your backup. You're down to Justin Jefferson still being injured. You don't know what's going to happen. You're playing the Lions twice, not going to work out. The Bears have been done. But Justin Fields has tried to do as much as he can before they wrongfully ship him out of town. And for the Giants, hey, Tom DeVito's been a fun story. And he's had 3 great wins and 3 great comeback drives, especially versus my Green Bay Packers. But you know what? You look at these teams, too little, too late for New York Giants. And
yeah.
Tommy DeVito is going to play great the rest of the season, and he's probably your quarterback next year. But at this point, it's not going to work out for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and it's a shame to look for these teams because they're just one or two less blown games away from being in a playoff spot.
Yep.
Because obviously these wild card teams are probably going to have most 8 to 9 wins.
Well, look, and again, the same thing with Atlanta. I mean, heck, they blew the game versus Minnesota when Dobbs made his debut.
Yeah,
And, the amount of times that they really should have lost games, but they barely won, that as well. What also comes to mind is how they blew the game to Tennessee. Will Levis made his debut and went off. Falcons
yeah,
defense got exposed. So a lot of it, like we talked about before, is Arthur Smith's incompetence and their inconsistency with this QB carousel, not committing to Desmond Ritter.
yep, no, 100%. So yeah, I mean, we got a few weeks left, but
Yeah, we
I
do.
do think these are a pretty solid outlook of where the divisions and where the spots are going to finish up. Wild card wise, division winners. We should have a fun couple weeks left of the season before the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. I think we're pretty spot on with where stuff will finalize. Again, things like injuries potentially happening or just, a potential team trying to play spoiler against a team battling for a playoff spot could happen. So we never know. But I think we'll be pretty right on with this. Thank you guys so much for watching that final season standing prediction video, guys. We had a lot of fun filming this. We're already up to week 16, the final 3 weeks of the season, guys. We get so excited every year for football. It just flies by. Another season is almost done, guys. Um, so we thought it would be a good idea to do this. Guys, if you're new here, drop a sub. If you liked the video, leave a like. Drop a comment with your guys' predictions for where you think everyone's going to finish 1 through 7 in each conference. As usual, guys, we'll be back next Thursday for our week 17 prediction video. And yeah, it's gonna be exciting. Good couple weeks after the season, guys. Enjoy your holiday, enjoy your Christmas. Peace out, everybody.